Hi, well, welcome aboard the Catalina. In wartime days, these aircraft would have had about 8 to 10 crew. There would have been 2 pilots. Up in the nose would have been an airman manning a machine gun. Where we are here, there would have been a radio operator and a navigator. And in the next compartment, sitting up in the pylon, would have been the flight engineer, monitoring the engines and with some of the controls for the engines. And then in the rear, the 2 blisters, we would have had an airman on either side manning a machine gun there. So typically a crew of 8, although on longer missions, and remember these aircraft sometimes did missions of 18 hours, you would have had, say, 2 navigators, 2 radio operators, and sometimes, as the Australians did, they would carry someone to maintain the engines as well as someone to arm the ordnance that was carried. I mentioned about them doing 18-hour missions. There were flights known as the Double Sunrise. These were operated from Perth in Western Australia to Ceylon, now known as Sri Lanka, and they were called the Double Sunrise because the crew would see the sun rise twice. And in fact, the longest one of those was 30 hours. So it says something about this aircraft in terms of its capability, but its immense range. And it was that range which allowed it to do so many wonderful things, either in the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, or in the Atlantic, going up towards the Arctic Circle to see what was happening there. So a really versatile and great range aircraft.
Can you explain your opinions about this aviation center and also this air show?
Well, I've never been to Turkey before. I didn't know what to expect, but wow, talk about a fantastic airfield here. A huge runway, great aprons, the facilities, fantastic, and the welcome we received. Never before have I arrived and been presented with flowers. That was absolutely wonderful. But the friendliness of the people has been overwhelming. It's really touched us immensely.
Thank you so much.
One of the roles of this aircraft was air-sea rescue, and this particular aircraft is in a US colour to represent an aircraft that was based in Halesworth, Suffolk, England, from the 5th Emergency Rescue Squadron. And the aircraft would go out on hearing that an airman had been shot down over the sea. The aircraft would land on the sea, and sometimes in very difficult conditions, to rescue that airman. And in our rear compartment there was an area which had rest bunks for the airmen to be put in to recover. There was also facilities to provide some basic food and hot drinks. But that was one of its main roles, rescuing down airmen. And of course, an aircraft of this size could pick up more than one airman. So if you had a bomber with, say, 7 crew, it had that capability to rescue all those airmen in one go. And for an airman in the sea, particularly something that was cold like the North Sea, getting rescued very, very promptly was critical to their survival.
Do you have any special memories about this?
Special memories, this aircraft in particular, I've had the privilege of meeting people who've served in this aircraft, either in a military sense, but post-military it was a water bomber, and we've taken it to France and had pilots come along and remember flying this aircraft. We've done trips to Moscow, we've done trips to Greenland. I personally did a trip around the UK in 2013 to commemorate that great aviator, Harry Hawker, who had attempted a circuit 100 years previously. So it's done all sorts of wonderful things, and long may we continue to keep this aircraft flying.
And how many people came here? Can you explain the team?
The crew for this particular flight was of 6. We had Seb, our captain. I'm co-pilot on this particular team. David Legg, our crew chief, is perhaps the best known person for history of the Catalinas worldwide. And then we had 3 ground crewed, Humphrey, Alan and Francis. And we're a multinational crew. Seb's from France, Francis is from Canada, I'm Australian. But we all love this aircraft dearly and have great pleasure in the privilege of being involved in flying her.
And may I ask another question? You said that this flight can fly 18 hours. In this 18 hours, do you eat? Do you cook?
These aircraft would have been able to do 18 hours. We certainly don't do 18 hours because the age of the crew is such that we need a break after 5 to 6 hours. But in those operations where they did these long-range missions, in the rear of the aircraft they had some primitive cooking facilities so they could prepare some hot food and hot drinks to sustain the crew. Essential when they were doing things either in very cold conditions as it was over the Atlantic and in the North Sea, but certainly very exhausting flying in the Pacific where it was extremely hot and the need to keep hydrated with fluids was so important.